Hi, my name is Alex Delgadillo. I am conducting this interview for my multicultural psychology studies course at Madera Community College, where we are learning about the experiences of American multicultural groups. Do I have your permission to record our conversation and share it with my professor?
Yeah, my permission.
Perfect. Okay. Obviously, as you heard before, my name is Alex Delgadillo. What is your name?
My name is Cameron Buffan.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Cameron Buffin, even though I've known you for a long time. Uh, this is a psychosocial interview. So we're going to discuss a few different topics today. Um, Really, it's going to be getting to know you and your cultural identity and experiences, and then also some things that you've gone through in your life that help you identify with what you identify as. Alrighty. Let's see here. I think I would just like to start with. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Sorry. I'd like to start with your personal and cultural background. So your social identity, whether that's racial, ethnic, or just socialization. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you identify ethnically, like your family, the whole 9 yards. Tell
Yeah.
me about yourself.
Uh, I guess when I tick the box on my paperwork, it says white. Um, but I guess a little deeper than that. I'm mostly Scottish. I have Native American. I have uh, a little bit of Mexican. I have a little bit of one other one out of Europe, but kind of a mix of everything. Uh, I grew up in the middle of nowhere in northeastern Washington. Really, the only people out there is white folks and Native Americans. That's a lot of where my heritage comes from, is up above Canada, and then coming out of Europe for the Scottish side. Uh, Growing up over there, you don't really see a lot of people, anyways. But as I progressed in life, I moved down. I've been to all three West Coast states, lived in each of them multiple times. So got to be in. I've lived in like the Seattle area for Washington. I've lived up in the northeastern spot by Spokane. Uh, I've moved to Fresno, California, Corning, California. Lived in Eugene, Oregon, Tillamook, Oregon, and kind of all over.
Okay. Um, what role do you think all those places play, and what you would say is your cultural background, your you know, your own identity. So when I say that, I'm talking about more so like when you lived in Washington, I don't know how long you lived in Washington for, but when you were living there, would you say your social identity was, you know, closer to Native American, closer to white? Were you living, were your grandparents there? Did you get a lot of your social identity from them?
Mhm.
By the time you moved down to, Fresno, um, if you moved to Fresno at a young age too, that could also influence your identity. I would say that I've also lived in a couple different places. And to be honest, white people are different all over the place, just as Mexicans are, just as black people are. They're where they grew up really affects their own identity, right? Like, I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, but, different people are different from, different places.
Mhm.
And so, it's quite interesting to hear that, being that you have traveled a lot, especially at a young age, you were, 24 years old, right?
Mhm.
So, how do you think that's played effect in your own social identity up until now?
Yeah,
You may appear as white, but how do you identify?
yeah, yeah. I think my original upbringing um, leans a little more on the native side. Just in my early years, it was ranching and living in the woods, and that was life. And then it turned from that to moving over to Fresno. I definitely uh, saw a change. I mean, Really, all of my friends and family around here are Hispanic. I've lived in the same household. Uh, my own fiance thinks I'm more Hispanic than she is. It's all about who you're with and who you love.
For sure. I definitely agree. I mean, I think that uh, sometimes I feel a little distant from my own, culture. I don't speak Spanish, so I get a lot of backlash from my own culture for that aspect. And I love country music. I've lived in Texas, and I mean, a lot of people would say I'm pretty white. So I think it's very acceptable for a white person to say that they feel connected to a different culture as well. Um, it's pretty cool. So I'm glad that we kind of got the introduction out of the way. Uh, what do you know about your family, and also, when it comes to immigration and migration? Do you know if your family has, like, yeah, I know you said Native Americans, so obviously, there wasn't a whole lot of immigration and migration there, but I'm assuming the white side may have immigrated, migrated from somewhere. What do you know about that in your own family? And then also, how do you feel about immigration and migration? Obviously, a big topic in our society today.
Mhm.
Um, but if you want to elaborate on that, first your own experience, your
Mhm.
family, and then how you feel about the topic today.
Yeah. I the most I know about the native side is just that part of that family is native, the other part of it is white. So there's somewhere up there, probably from French Canadian. But then on my other side of the family, my Scottish side, we were actually on the Mayflower. My family was on the Mayflower. They're one of the handful of documented names on there. Um, so I had family come across and migrate on one of the original migrations on the Mayflower. From there, I think it's just kind of everywhere. Um, as far as immigration and that today, I think that America is the land of opportunity, and I don't think that that should be limited to anybody. I think that opportunity is there if you're willing to get it. Uh, I think that there's right ways to do it and there's wrong ways to do it, but at the end of the day, if you can take the opportunity, you take it.
Mhm. No, I agree 110%. I mean, obviously, me and you, we both know that, like I said, it's been a big topic here as of lately. Do you think that, like you said, there's right ways to do it and there's wrong ways to do it? Do you think that sometimes the punishment fits the crime, or do you think that as a society or maybe as a country, we're being a little stern-handed, when it comes to immigration or anything like that? Or do you feel that, maybe we do need to be a little more strict of who we let in or anything like that? And also, like, I think I think about the differences of immigration is when you leave somewhere to make somewhere else your home, and then migration is when you're leaving your home because of another reason, right? So, like, let's say the Irish potato famine. All those people
Mhm.
left because they were going to,
Mhm.
pass away, or they couldn't feed themselves. Do you think that we should be a little more understanding towards people's situations, or things like that, or elaborate, I guess, a little bit more on how you feel about everybody,
Mhm.
coming in? I I have my own personal opinions, but I would love to hear yours.
Yeah. I mean, from an individualism standpoint, it's tough. And I think that there's definitely policies in place that are very strict and they're not very forgiving or understanding. It's very black and white, and that's not the way that we are as a race, as a humanity, we are not black and white. We're very gray. So on that side of it, yeah, I really think that we're lacking.
Hmm.
But on the other side of it, kind of looking at numbers. And if you're running a country and you have X amount of mouths to feed, and now 30,000 more mouths are wanting to be fed also. That's pretty tough. Not to say that everyone's looking for a handout, but in an economy, I mean, that really matters, and that can break an economy. So I think it's a double-edged sword on that one. There's one side we're trying to run a country, on the other side, people have mouths to feed too. And that goes back to the land of opportunity.
Yeah, 110%. I like that. I like your elaboration on that. Okay, let's see. Go ahead and dive into our next topic of let's go with experiences with racism and discrimination. I think that this would be an interesting one because you've lived in so many different places, and maybe that cultural and ethnic breakdown of all those places is probably really different. I know that here in the Central Valley, we have a very, very, you know, high Latino population or Latinx, however you want to say it, but a very high Latino population. And I'm assuming that probably, the population is a lot bigger here than it would be in Washington or maybe even Oregon where you lived. Are What would you say? Go ahead and dive into your own experiences with racism, discrimination. You know, how do you feel about racism and discrimination? Do you think that, I know that some people discuss that racism is really only something that white people can do to others because of social power.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that that's true? Or um, have you ever, has someone ever been racist or discriminatory towards you for being white? I would love to hear about your experiences with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, growing up in those areas, not a lot of people. So it's always tough because everyone over there is just willing to help a neighbor. You never really notice anything like that. And then as you go somewhere a little closer to Fresno, all of a sudden there's more people. Fresno's got 500,000 and growing. That's not even a big city. Uh, and I think, as you start to see it, there are always lines, different, you know, the city itself is set up in different areas. And I think that's kind of a problem in and of itself, is that everyone has moved away from each other, and there's no real community. So it's, as far as racism goes, it's kind of everybody against everybody right now. It's not really specific. Um, I know that I have also traveled a lot for work. I've been all over the US, and I can tell you that I've been to places where I didn't feel welcome. Um, and I've been to places where I know other people feel the same. So I think, I've actually witnessed it, uh, between two gangs in Chicago. It was, I can't remember who it was, but yeah, it's I've seen it. I've seen literally that they were fighting only because of whose skin looked like what. I think that's a problem.
110%. I agree. I think that it definitely is a problem. Um, have you yourself ever experienced racism? Like, would you say has it been ever been like really blatant? I mean, obviously, when a lot of times when people think racism, they think blatant disrespect and or name calling or slurs or anything like that. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Nothing to the extreme. Nothing to the extreme, but I mean, I do see it at like workplace. I've seen it different places you go. There's the Mexican guy that's the help, and then there's the white kid that's sitting there doing nothing, and he's probably getting paid
Yeah.
more. So I do see it, and it's subtle. It's
Yeah.
it's little things like that where you don't really notice it, but the other guy's working his ass off, and this guy's just sitting there.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. So
110%. How do you feel about stereotypes, right? Because I mean, right, that's the stereotype, right? Somewhere there's a Mexican busting his back, and then there's some white guy, pointing the pin around, telling him what to do, right? Do you feel that stereotypes are somewhat accurate, or do you think that they kind of stem from very, non-factual, things?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit in the gray area too, I think, because at the end of the day, I mean, there is a little bit of a stereotype. There is, but that's culture.
Hmm.
It's not so much a stereotype as it is a way of life for a certain type of people. And I think that's a little bit different. And maybe that's what people correlate so much with stereotype. But then there is also the option to stereotype in a negative way. And I think that's obviously what most people focus on.
Hmm.
And that's what is so offensive often is kind of that negative stereotype. Um, and I think as far as the negative stereotypes go, it's you never judge a book by its cover. You can read the first 2 minutes of it, but that doesn't tell you the whole story. And I think that's what we're missing with that.
For sure. I think it's a good transition as well, because I think that the next thing I wanted to ask you about was prejudice and stereotypes, and also how you view people, right? So, with the cultural experiences that you have from, the different places that you live, different demographics and stuff like that, how do you go about meeting a new person, whether that person is white, black, or some other ethnicity or race? Do you treat all people the same? Do you have reservations when it comes to meeting certain people? Things like that. How do you feel about your own self? Like, hey, like maybe I was a little prejudiced towards that person, or maybe I did stereotype them before I got to meet them. Does it happen, on a regular, or do you think that you've gotten better over time as you've, lived in a more what's a diverse demographic, such as Fresno?
Yeah, I think you know I, I'm not going to say that I'm not guilty of stereotyping. I think that that's a pretty easy thing to do, especially when it's a situation where I feel that I have to protect myself. I think in a situation like that, we're in somewhere that we don't normally go, not familiar with my area, and some guy's just walking up on the street. He's walking by us, and he's kind of close. I'm gonna feel a little bit of a way, no matter who he is. So it's not even really, it's really situational. I think on that side of things. But as far as meeting people and no matter really who they are, it's I was raised on to each their own, and I think that that applies to every situation. I've never really looked at someone and went, "Oh, I'm not really going to talk to you because, oh, you're Mexican. I'm not really going to talk to you." Like, oh, I'm not going to say what's up to this guy because I've never seen it that way. It's always a new chapter. I think you never really know anyone, just like I said. And to each their own is my favorite way of looking at it. Who am I to say what I think that you should be, and vice versa? And I think going into a conversation that way, I've never really had a bad outcome. I just greet everybody with a smile.
I like that. I really do. I think that, it's a really good way to live your life. Okay, and then our last topic is really kind of just a reflection, kind of what you want people to hear, Um, the category name is advice and reflections, and then the one under it, and the first two words are social change. Is there anything that you would like to see different in the world? Maybe from white people, from black people, from Mexicans, from anybody, from America, Yeah, I think that, sometimes I think about my surroundings and it's like, man, I can't change anything. But at the same time, if I could, I'd do this. Um, I guess I just want to pick your brain on how do you feel? If you could give advice to white people, some people don't feel the same way that you do, don't have the same outlook on life. If you could give advice to, Mexicans or people of color, what would you say to them to approaching a white person? Because as some people do hold grudges and, from a lot of past history, you know, although we may think it was a long time ago, some people still hold that like hurt in their heart. And yeah, I would just love to hear about what you think. Any advice or reflections or your opinion on social change?
Yeah, I think. Honestly, it goes back to each their own. I think if everybody was to just stop for a second and uh, in the Bible it says to love thy neighbor, right? And I think that whether you want to bring it into a religious sense or not, it matters. There's no community. The the rise of individualism has proven the fall of community. And with the fall of community, it's a lot easier to point at other people because there's no love. I think that's all we're missing is love. If you could just for a second tell yourself to love that person before you go into any situation where you feel some type of way about them, I think you'll look at it different, and I think it'll slowly change. It's it's all about that. It's not going to be one big change. There's not going to be a whole populace that's going to come together and say, yeah, okay, hey, we're gonna do better. It's going to take each individual telling themselves that they're going to do better every day. And that's all it'll take.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, that's all I got. Do you have any questions or anything else that you would like to say?
No, I'm all
All
good.
righty, alrighty. Well, that concludes our interview. Thank you. I appreciate you, Cameron.
Yeah, thank you.